Okay, in this demo, we're going to take our bodice front that has one dart from waist and create it into a princess seam, or turn it into a princess seam. So the first thing we need to do here is we need to basically divide this bodice in half. All right, it's already done for us below bust line. If you see here, we have our dart, okay? And we look from center front to this dart leg closest to center front, all the way up the bust line. That's 1/2 basically of the pattern, all right? It's not perfectly half, but it's about that, okay? And then the second half comes from side seam to the second dart leg, okay? So that's the second part of our princess seam. So basically we need to divide it right here, okay? From shoulder down to apex, all right? So what a princess seam does, it adds even more contour than a dart can. And princess seams can come from shoulder and they can come from armhole. All right. In this case, we're going to do it from midpoint of shoulder. All right. And it travels down through where we have the most contour in the body and gives us the most fit. So let's go ahead and we want to find the center part of our shoulder. All right. I already have it marked here with a notch. If you need to find it, you can measure. If you need to find the midpoint of shoulder here, you can measure from intersection of armhole and shoulder to intersection of neckline and shoulder, okay, and mark it. Or you can just fold those 2 points together, crease it, and then that would be the midpoint of your shoulder. Right? So I'm going to mark mine. I'm just going to draw a line from my shoulder, midpoint of shoulder, to my apex. There we go. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some notches there. I'm going to measure up about 2.5 inches from my apex up that line I just drew, and I'm going to mark a notch like so. And I'm going to do the same thing below. In this case, I'm going to come from this dart tip, and I'll measure down about 2 inches from that dart tip, and I'm going to mark a notch on each side of that, or on each dart leg, like so. So that when I go to sew this princess seam together, I have notches that I can match up. Also, there'll be some ease probably in this, meaning extra fabric, okay? And that is typically on the side that has the curve on it, okay? We'll talk about that more in just a minute. All right, so let's go ahead. First thing we're gonna do is cut out the center, the seam allowance of our dart. So just go ahead and cut up one of your dart legs. We'll do a better job there. Okay, cut up the dart leg to the dart tip, and cut up this dart leg to dart tip. Removing that. Now, from that dart tip, I'm just going to follow my line up to apex, and then this plot line I drew up to the shoulder, dividing the pieces in 2 halves. There we go. Okay, so I have my center front panel and then my side front panel. Let's go ahead and transfer these to paper and perfect them. All right, so now I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to create a placement line on my paper. And let's draw right on here. So, and I also want to create a balance line. All right, that balance line will be where my bust line is here at center front and where my apex was. It should be a 90-degree angle off of my placement line. Draw that on. There we go. Okay, now we can go ahead and take our center front and place it right on the placement line and line up the bust line with that balance line. And we'll just tape that on, hold it in place. And now I'm going to go ahead and trace that off. So we'll start here at waist and center front. And I'm going to come up what's going to be my princess seam. Now this isn't perfectly straight, we're going to fix all that. And continue all the way up. And now I'm at shoulder, I'm going to come across shoulder. And then I'm also going to transfer neckline. Remember, I have my 2 notches here. So let's go ahead and transfer those. Notch there, notch there. I'll now remove this. Okay, now we can start to perfect. Okay, as you can see, I have this weird kind of little jagged edge here. We want to get rid of that. We want this to be nice and smooth. I'm just going to take my curve ruler and I'm going to find a nice slight curve that basically blends this together here. So I'll just use my curve ruler until I find something that I like where I'm blending this together. I think right there looks good. And there we go. I've basically eliminated this gap here and this part that juts out. And I'll finish blending all this. Up here I have a slight curve maybe, so we'll go ahead and use the curve ruler. Like that. Don't forget your 2 ease notches. Right there and right there. Okay. We'll blend in here at shoulder. Perfect. At intersection of waist and neckline. Sorry, at intersection of center front and neckline. Intersection of waist and center front. I'm going to go ahead and square out about a 1/2 inch because I want to make sure I don't end up with a point there. And then I can just perfect my neckline from shoulder down to the 1/2 inch mark. And the same thing here at waist. Perfect those 2 places. Okay, and this is center front. Let's go ahead and do our side front panel, which is this one. Okay. I'm going to place on that balance line I brought out or squared out. I'm going to go ahead and place where my bust line intersects at that princess seam and where it intersects at armhole and side seam. I'm going to place those 2 points right on that line. And then I'll just go ahead and tape that down so I can trace it off. I'll just put a little piece of tape here. And now I can go ahead and trace that off. Trace around. Oops. And come up armhole. Make sure you transfer any notches you have. Directional notch there, armhole. Okay, I also want to transfer on these ease notches. Here and right here. There we go. Now we can go ahead and perfect this. So side seam is straight. Okay. Here, okay, is my bust line. I'm going to go ahead and true my princess seam up from waist, and I'm going to stop about 1 inch or so. Right where it starts curving, I'm going to stop because I'm going to have to blend that with a curve ruler. But wherever it's straight, I'm going to stop until it starts curving. And do the same thing down from shoulder. Just draw that, true that line in until you start to have curvature. So right about right there. Shoulder, it's a straight line. I can go ahead and true that. are. And now we'll use our curve ruler, and I'll perfect the waistline. And I'll perfect my armhole. There's armhole. I have my directional notch right there. And now I'm going to finish perfecting the curvature at the princess line. And I'll find just a nice curve that kind of blends these 2 points together. Probably right about there. There we go. And I also have my 2 ease notches right there. Okay. Then you can add your seam allowance and grain lines. Grain line on the side princess panel will be perpendicular to the bust line, so just square off bust line there. And then on my front princess panel, it'll just be parallel to center front. Like so. Okay. And then you can add seam allowance around that, and front can have a seam there, or you could just cut that unfold. Alright, there's your princess panel. Now something to remember here when you're sewing this together, notice that the front panel side of princess seam is nice and straight. The side panel side of princess seam is curved, meaning that most likely this line here is longer than this one here. Okay, so when sewing these two together, you'll want to put this side against the feed dogs of the machine, because they will help ease it in to this. Alright, so if you've ever sewn 2 long pieces of fabric together and you finished and one was shorter, okay, and they were both the same length when you started, that shorter edge, or that shorter side, was probably against the feed dogs. And those feed dogs came and they grabbed that fabric and they slowly eased it as you sewed that, okay. Here we want that to happen between these 2 notches, okay. If you think here, okay, this is coming around the bust, and we want it to ease in and cup around the bust and ease into here. Okay, so that's why we have these 2 notches. And again, I would put this panel against the feed dogs and let it just ease right into this one. All right, so there's princess seam from shoulder.